Today, I'll be presenting about the predictive analytics in nuclear safety, the new era of waste repository management. Before I go straight to the implementation of techniques with nuclear waste repositories, I would like to do a comparative analysis upon Puan protests in South Korea and Yucca Mountain project in the United States. First, the Puan protests was initiated through a unilateral decision in regard to implementing a radioactive waste storage facility in Puan, South Korea. It provoked mass opposition, evoking major protests across the country. The government has promised for compensation. However, due to the major oppositions of the residents, the project failed. This is a prime example of a failure of a top-down approach, a method imposed without a democratic dialogue. The non-transparent measures involved in the process not only caused a fuel for the failure for the radioactive waste storage facility, but also resulted a withdrawal and a national backlash from across the country. The Yucca Mountain project is a $44 billion project that has gone to waste, as no permanent waste repositories were built in spite of the funding. The federal government of the United States have been accumulating monetary funds for siting nuclear waste repositories, dating back from the 1980s. The fund was approximately $44.3 billion in total. However, the nuclear repository was yet to be built. The United States Department of Energy had initially examined 9 places for nuclear waste repositories but eventually pinned down to Nevada. This was because Nevada had the weakest political influence, and this is referred to as the Screw Nevada Bill. The unilateral decision by the Department of Energy without community endorsement regarding the implementation of nuclear repositories has caused outrage of the Nevada residents, eventually disapproving the project to be continued. Both the Puan protests and the Yucca Mountain resemble the failure of the projects prompted by the disapproval of the residents, alarmed by the potential risks nuclear repository implementation can cause. The Yucca Mountain project is commonly referred to as an exemplary case of not in my backyard, an act of disapproval for any infrastructure to be constructed in one's neighborhood while being nonchalant if the same infrastructure were to be built elsewhere. The high correlation of the tragedy of commons and not in my backyard expose individuals to be prioritizing one's wealth instead of communal welfare. The lack of active engagement between the residents and the regulatory bodies have resulted the absence of nuclear repositories in both South Korea and the United States. The proposed resolution is mitigating nuclear repository risks with the predictive artificial intelligence, developing a radioactive strategy that predicts radioactive leaks, while improving the predictive analytic process analyzes the likelihood of long-term risks with simulations with AI that can be proposed to mitigate the risks. Implementing such radioactive strategy is a preventative measure regarding the opposition of the residents, as the residents would be acknowledged of potential threats. Moreover, it also rebuilds societal trust through eliminating possible nuclear hazards by risk assessment and disclosing the results transparently to the public. Following figure is a SWOT analysis of the proposed technique. For strengths, it actively mitigates the risks of potential nuclear leaks through developing preventative measures within the predictive analysis process. It also rebuilds public trust through an elimination of a possible nuclear hazard through risk assessment. Third, NIMBism may be eliminated. A nuclear repository site may be sought for it to be utilized once the trust is regained and the project is approved by the residents. Lastly, enhanced risk management through a appropriate measures based on the protocols can be implemented. For weaknesses, the technique can be costly, as developing a foreseeing technique embedded with simulations of the AI for detecting the nuclear levels requires high skills, and high maintenance and monitoring is also required, as the operation procedure with errors may result to the failure of the project. For opportunities, developed technique may be utilized in broader areas for examining risks assessment in different areas when dealing with environmental sciences. Effective policymaking. The regained public trust can influence constructive policy to be made. Lastly, the influence policymaking on a global basis. Countries without distinct nuclear repositories, such as Finland, Japan, United Kingdom, and Sweden, may implement the same strategy to be implemented. For threats, cybersecurity threats. The AI-driven predictive technique measures is vulnerable for cyber attacks and exploitations. The incorrect AI predictions with approvals may cause over-reliance and heavy dependence of the artificial intelligence automations. Lastly, the disapproval of the regulatory bodies regarding the nuclear power. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission in the U.S. and the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, the International Atomic Energy Agency may disapprove the AI-driven predictive leak detection model to be implemented. This table assesses risks based from low to extreme, and this is the risk mitigations that prevents such risks. First, utilizing ensemble models. Using ensemble models, collect numerous datasets and yield results based on the collective data upon examination. Secondly, cybersecurity threats. Through incorporation of threat detection and response and implementation, a multi-step authentication process for administration can mitigate the cybersecurity threats. Lastly, disapproval of the regulatory bodies and budget overruns can be prevented through running campaigns and acknowledging nuclear waste repositories as an obligatory requirement. The legal appeal towards implementing a new policy regarding the quality standards of AI operations can also be sought. This is a worked breakdown structure for a predictive techniques in nuclear safety project that divides assessment, technology development, experimentations, trial and error, monitoring and evaluations, and post-deployment into 5 steps. This is the Gantt chart, which would be proceeded from 2026 to 2027 second quarters. Thank you.